What's up, everybody? Welcome. It's House Divided here on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Chad Hastings. Do us a solid like, comment, subscribe to the page. All those things that YouTube people say whenever they do a YouTube video, they do matter. The algorithms and stuff. You can scan that QR code to join Orange Bloods. You can jump into the chat in the Specs chat, and we will potentially put your stuff up on the screen. We'll take your super chats. We'll be interactive. We'll try to. And oh, by the way, this show is brought to you by the guys over at Texas Card House and Hijack Poker. I did play in the free daily roll at 9 a.m. today. I grinded through, Chad.
How do we end up?
You know, the blinds finally get to a point where you get ace queen suited. You don't have much of a choice. You call someone's all in. They've got king 10. And my queen hits and his king hits, and sometimes c'est la vie. That's the way it goes. But I am on Hijack Poker all the time. You can play it on your desktop, which is what I normally do. I don't play so much on the phone as much as I do on my screen because I can do a million things all at once. But do it today. You got to be inside the state of Texas, but we do love our title sponsor.
No doubt about it. Thanks to those great sponsors. Thanks to everybody for jumping in and catch more recruiting stuff to talk about today. First big weekend down, the second two.
Oh, hold on.
Yes.
Breaking news.
Whoa.
A new baseball movies has been announced. Chad.
Whoa.
It would appear.
Whoa.
After almost 3 decades that the hair pick finally found some shit.
Hopefully we can all be back for Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money.
The Schwartz.
They got to call it that, right? They literally said it in the first movie. It has to be called Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. It has to be.
Oh, God.
That's what yogurt told us back in the day. I'll give that one a shot, Catch. I don't care how long it's been. Usually the sequels don't work after a long time, but I'm in. If Mel,
take my money. Take my money.
Mel, please take my money. I'll go check it out.
Continue, Chad. Sorry. There was breaking news.
No,
from first minute. We had to interrupt the show.
That is the only thing right now that if you're a Longhorn fan, you care about maybe more than the updates that we're going to throw out. But as this big weekend comes up where Felix Ojo and some other badasses are coming in, we continue to have updates from the last weekend, from the June 6th group and some of these others. So we're going to get into a discussion today that I know you want to get into about this coaching staff, but we start really at a spot where it's one of the big time recruits in this 2026 class. There continues to be good updates. This one might be a little more of a secretive update, but let's just start with Lamar Brown. Remind everybody who he is, why he's important, and what's the update today?
I think it's the most clickbaity thing we've done this month. Full transparency. It's June 12th. We're teasing with a very sexy, teasing, silent commitment kind of headline. I do feel bad about that a smidge. Not entirely.
Okay.
Because it's not like we're making it up completely out of thin air, but 5-star athlete, although again, I think most people see him as a defensive lineman, but he plays both sides of the ball. Lamar Brown out of University Lab in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He's visiting LSU in a couple of weeks. He's visiting A&M, scheduled to this weekend. He visited Texas last weekend. He's taken in Miami. He's a guy that most people don't think Texas is going to get, but ever since Texas was able to get him in for an official visit, I've been like, uh-oh, Texas covets him. Watch that when we've talked about that in this space. I've talked about it on Orange Bloods. You watch what comes out of that visit. I think that this may be the annual Texas kind of came out of nowhere and got themselves significantly involved in a guy's recruitment, maybe way more so than people would have even speculated a month ago. Well, in our Truth and Lies column over at orangebloods.com, which, to be fair, in this week's, usually Jason and I tag team that together. This week, I really was like the guys with the hair pick in Spaceballs. I just didn't have anything. So Jason took it all, but his very first rumor that he graded out as a 4, which stands for probably bullshit, but you probably shouldn't be too emphatic about it, Lamar Brown is a silent commitment to Texas. That's been a thing that was kind of going around a little bit. One recruit last week actually told Jason in person that he had been hearing that Lamar Brown was going to end up at Texas, kind of planting the seed that maybe a silent commitment had been given. That feels, I think, a bit much with visits still to go, but I think it gives an indication that Texas, I think, certainly made a big impression on Brown. I think they're in it to win it with that kid. I think that becomes maybe the most interesting recruitment to watch, not just until he announces his decision on July 10th. I think that's one that will bear watching all the way until the finish line. And maybe that thing doesn't truly reach its zenith until November or December. That I will continue to lean on Texas's preference from an NIL standpoint is to make the big pitch later in the game. I'm sure they could give a pitch to Lamar Brown right now, and I'm sure he's getting pitches, but it's almost certain that a guy like that doesn't get the final pitches until later in the year. We saw it with Michael Fasusi. He stayed with Oklahoma, but Texas gave him something to think about. Texas gave Justice Terry something to think about, and it gave Georgia and everybody that was recruiting Justice Terry something to think about. And those November offers can change the game, or it can be something that like whets the appetite or maybe makes things interesting in that final month of a recruiting process for a guy, but maybe it doesn't change it. Again, Michael Fasusi was a guy that stayed with a pat hand when it was all said and done, but we saw that it impacted Cade Phillips. We saw that it impacted certainly Justice Terry, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see Texas take a similar approach, but they're making headway right now in June. I think before Texas would tell you they actually do their best stuff. It's like somebody who's got a special move in the sack and someone tells them like, you're a good kisser. And you're like, baby, you ain't seen nothing yet. I wonder if that's Texas with the recruitment right now. It's like, just stay tuned. It gets better actually. And I think, you know, when I look at Lamar Brown, and again, one of the things that's really interesting about Lamar Brown, in addition to it was the lead rumor in today's Truths and Rumors section over at orangebloods.com, which again, scan that QR code, go check it out. He's not the only guy that Texas is in where you hear through the grapevine that Texas is potentially a threat to flip somebody. But Lamar Brown is another guy. We talked about this yesterday on the show, Chad, that there's a show about Texas assistant coach Alan Clark, new guy on the staff, that for the last couple of weeks I've been thinking, not the first time on the channel that Alan Clark has been the subject of discussion on Orange Bloods Live, but I haven't really had that discussion yet. I wasn't on a modcast where that was a discussion yet. And honestly, there's been so much more discussion about Alan Clark over the course of the last couple of weeks that I think this thing has actually been picking up steam. Lamar Brown, in talking to Jason Sukamel this week over at Orange Bloods, again, mentions Alan Clark as a real critical reason for why the Longhorns are where they are in recruiting with him. Alan Clark has been mentioned a lot in the last couple of weeks by recruit after recruit after recruit. It's obvious that this guy is turning into a difference maker on the recruiting trails for the Longhorns. And this is, it is a level of surprise that is notable and worth mentioning, because I think Alan Clark is very quickly emerging as kind of a rock star on the recruiting trails for Texas. But I'm not quite sure that this is what everybody expected when he was hired. This is, you know, it's like an unexpected blessing of sorts for somebody who already has a bunch of blessings. It's always the rich kid who it's like, oh, look what I got for Christmas. I didn't even ask for that. It's a new G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip. And it's like, oh, he didn't even ask for it, and he got it. And for a program that just signed the #1 recruiting class in the country to be in a position where a difference maker in recruiting from the coaching side has kind of fallen into their lap, it's a really big deal. This guy's being mentioned more than any other coach on the staff right now. And this guy was a GA a year ago at Ohio State and wasn't really in a position at Ohio State to do what he's doing now. This is a first for him. And just like a year ago, we looked at the new defensive line coach. I said, okay, well, that guy's got to be an upgrade over
Bo Davis.
Bo Davis. Sorry, I almost said Oscar Giles. Something about guys who've made repeated trips to the Texas staff that at that position, they get stuck in my mind. But just like we had said, man, there's got to be an upgrade over Bo Davis, well, no matter what they do. And then they made it a little bit of an unorthodox move and replacing and filling that void. And then it actually worked out for Texas. Alan Clark is only on staff right now because the NCAA opened up the rules for the amount of coaches that you can have on staff. So he became an assistant coach at the edge position that didn't even exist a year ago. And this guy was just a GA at Ohio State, which means he wasn't out on the road recruiting. Now, you know, we all know that Ohio State defensive line was pretty badass while he was a GA there. But nobody's walking around giving the GA a ton of it. Like, GAs don't get that much credit. So, Chad, when he was hired, it was like, okay, they've hired a young guy, and he came from Ohio State, and he's got a little bit of a good reputation. And, okay, they're taking advantage of this new rule where they can have more coaches on the field. But, you know, not the number of coaches that can be out on the road hasn't really changed. So when he was hired, it really was, I think, a thought of, oh, cool, this guy's going to work with the edge players. That's good. And he looks like a young up-and-comer. But the immediate reaction wasn't, hot damn, we just got a guy that might be our best recruiter on staff. And you know what? If we really covet Lamar Brown, he's the guy that we send in to do the heavy lifting. That was unknown. And that he's emerging as that kind of a guy makes him one of suddenly the most important natural resources in the Texas program. That Texas has had some guys like this in the past. Rashad Samples is a perfect example. A guy like Brian Carrington, who was, you know, behind the scenes, but was thought of as a young star. But Texas was in a position where it felt like, can we really put him on the coaching staff with his bio? Other schools felt like, you know what, we can. And now he looks like a guy that you'd probably want on your staff. Rashad Samples, another example. Alan Clark, in a position to do what he's doing because of new rules that allowed for it to do so. And I think this time next year, when we're doing shows after signing day or after the season is over, and we're doing that exercise where we rank coaches, who's the most important coaches, who are the most valuable assistant coaches on this staff, I think Alan Clark is going to be able to say he put himself into a position really quickly where as early as next season, the Board of Regents will be approving a significant raise for him.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. He's quickly become a superstar. We're talking Alan Clark today, but also Lamar Brown.
He'll be $1 million a year position coach very soon.
I think that's probably fair. If you guys want to jump in the chat, that's certainly fair. We'll take all those super chats that you want to throw our way. They will go right to the top. I'll throw out a little more on Clark here in a sec, Catch. But as we thank some of our great partners, why don't you tell the folks about Rogue Shop? I feel like I haven't heard you talk Rogue in a while from everything that's been going on. I know you and I both are kind of feeling a little under the weather these last couple of days. Rogue can help with that, right?
No, it's not like under the weather. It's just that it's cloudy.
Yeah, right.
And I said it, I had like chills today because it was a little damp. The weather was just damp. And that doesn't really have anything to do with Rogue Shop other than I think Chad was saying I needed to feel a little bit better because I had some chills. Hey, man, I love that Chad doesn't even use Rogue Shop, but he knows, hey, man, something hurts. You know, you could rub some dirt on it, or you could take some products from Rogue Shop. Pain, anxiety, sleeplessness. That's honestly what I needed to do last night, was to take a gummy, and I didn't. I was like, oh, I'm tired. I'll fall asleep organically. And I did. But then I woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and had to go to the bathroom. And while I was at the bathroom, I was like, you know what? Maybe something happened with Liverpool soccer. I checked my phone because I'm an idiot. Something happened, but not in a good way. Suddenly I couldn't go back to sleep. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. I've been up for 3 hours. Had I just taken a goddamn gummy at 10, I would have been able to go back to sleep. Sometimes you just have to trust your instincts, and I didn't. And you know what? Trust my instincts when I tell you, check out Rogue Shop. Scan that QR code. They're Texas' home for legal CBD, THC, and so much more. Who knows how much longer we're actually going to have them. Take advantage of it while you can, and find a thing that'll help your life be a little bit better. Thank you, Chad.
I'm not telling them how to run their business, but they ought to do a promo code goddamn gummies. Like, that would be fantastic. It'd be easy to remember.
Well, you know, it's just one of those things, like when my little brain just I started thinking about emails and stuff that I got to send, and then the Liverpool thing was happening. And the thing is, if I'd taken a gummy, I'd have just got back in bed and put my head on a pillow and gone to sleep.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Shout out to Rogue. Shout out to you guys on the chat. Just real quick, one of our other partners is getting some love. James says, Chad, you might be onto something. I just left Hayes City store getting my order. My bacon jam burger was my usual. The waiter told me, if you're a fan of pork, get the blackened pork chops. The waiter claimed it's the best thing on the menu. I can't stray away from the damn burger, though. James, I understand both of those things. I understand why the waiter said what he said, but I understand why you're sticking with your burger, because sometimes we do that. But if you're ever in the mood, it is a hell of a pork chop. So shout out to Hayes City Store as well. And all you guys jumping in the chat. If you want to throw in something on Lamar Brown or ask a question about Alan Clark, get more of Ketch's thoughts, we can certainly do that. Okay, Ketch. On yesterday's show, I started to say something about Alan Clark and Lamar Brown, and you told me to shut up because it might belong in another show. Does it belong here?
Well, yeah, this is like the Alan Clark, Lamar Brown show. What are we doing? What are you asking?
This is, I'm just making
sure. Can I ask you a question? Would there ever be a better show that
I'm just making sure. But there is such a wild little bit of circumstance here that could really help Texas. And yesterday we talked about Lamar Brown a little bit. And for those that don't know, he goes to this high school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Yeah, that city. And apparently you can see LSU from the school. So there's this thought of, well, how in the world could anybody get him out of Baton Rouge? He's a badass. He's now so badass. He's listed as an athlete. You know, some people think he could be a great offensive lineman if he wanted to, but it's, you know, headed towards defensive line as we talked about. But Catch, the Alan Clark connection is wild. And when Jason Sukumel talked to this guy, the notes he's gotten, again, go to orangebloods.com. You can see all this stuff. But the fact that that relationship with Alan Clark matters so much to Lamar Brown. He brought Alan Clark up to Jason when talking to him. And it even goes back to Alan Clark's dad is some kind of a famous coach in Louisiana and coached Lamar Brown when he was a little kid. So those he's known him that long. So if you want to know,
go back to middle school,
right? Going all the way back to like middle school basketball, I think it is. So Alan Clark, real tight end in Louisiana, Northwestern State and Grambling were his two schools where he played. Then he was a GA at Prairie View. He was at Southern right before he went to Ohio State. And so he's got these connections in Louisiana, and that may end up being one of the secret weapons as to why, if Lamar Brown ends up in Austin, it might be that. He has told Jason at Orange Bloods, and you can see these notes there, but he's told him that relationship is really important. And Catch, you know this better than anybody, man. It's about taking care of the kid. The family wants to know you're being taken care of. There's a personal side for Alan Clark here. So over and above everything else he brings, this one is specifically personal, and it could be the key to Texas getting him.
Yeah, look, it's still going to be a hard battle. And Texas isn't the betting favorite. But Texas is in the battle in a way that a month ago it just didn't seem like they were. And it always felt like they just need to get him on campus once. And I think that's what Sarkeesian kind of always believed. You know, to me, the story here, though, is still Allen. It's Clark. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it is, and it's Sarkeesian, honestly. You couldn't have known it would completely work out like this. You couldn't. I mean, you could hear people say he is a guy that we think is a future star, but he doesn't have a resume. He hasn't gone out and Tashard choiced it, right? Where he's at Georgia Tech and he lands a couple of national top 100 guys. I'm like, oh, well, if he can get national 100 guys to go to Georgia Tech, imagine what he'll do at a school like Texas, right? He didn't have those type of responsibilities at Ohio State. So suddenly and this is really unusual. This is, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have to really go back and think, but you can probably count on just a couple of fingers the number of guys that 4, 5, 6 months into their journeys as newest. Usually guys need a year, and I can remember the interviews that Anwar has done recently with coaches who, they're finishing up their first year and they really feel like, okay, now I kind of have a sense of what the job is, what it will look like. Chris Jackson talked about this. Even though he had a good year in his first year of recruiting, there was a sense that, okay, year 2, I'm really going to find my sweet spot. That he's come in and had the impact that he's had, not just with Brown either. It feels like every defensive lineman they're recruiting keeps bringing up Clark.
Yeah, Jamarion Carlton has brought his name up in discussion.
They all are. And that's a surprise. You just wouldn't have known that it would be quite like that. Again, it will be fascinating because here's what will happen in the offseason. He will have suitors. He's a recruiting difference maker. There are
no doubt.
Those guys are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. And here's 2 other elements, Catch, both coming from Alex Dunlap at Orange Bloods. Again, sign up with Orange Bloods, easy way right there with the QR code. But Catch, 2 notes from Alex through this time got me thinking more and more about Clark. One was the thing at the combine where he and Cody for Football with Friends, they go in there and they do stuff for Roster Watch as well. Alex is really tied into all that. And he loves to find different questions to ask. And he asked Tui Moloau, the big dog defensive lineman from Ohio State, about La'Allen Clark. Just a throw out question like, let me see if I can get a little something. And Tui Moloau comes right back with, oh, you work for Texas? You cover Texas? He said, yeah, you stole one there. So he immediately gives a positive reaction. And then that was kind of a file it away moment, I think, for Alex. The other thing Alex talked about later is that Clark's office has become the office where guys want to hang out. And offense and defense, not just the defensive lineman, Catch, but other players. He just has a way to connect with these guys. Relationships. We always talk about it. But apparently that's a thing too. So just a couple things to kind of file away from the player's perspective part. And then you're hearing these recruits say his name. It just continues to build with Coach Clark.
Yeah. Again, this guy does seem to have. The thing is, every time a guy's hired, you hear stuff like this. Oh, he's going to be great with the kids. The kids are going to love him. Right. He's a future star. Well, there are only so many stars.
Yeah, you don't hire a coach and then it's like, you know what he hates? Relationships. Can't stand them.
You hear this is everything that you're hearing. And look, sometimes guys will show up and they'll get talked about like this. And look, here's the thing. He still has to close the deal with some big timers.
Yep.
Because you would get defensive linemen that would say this about Bo Davis. And then it'd be like, well, who did he sign? And I was like, well, he didn't even sign anybody any good, but everybody loves Bo Davis. And Texas fans love Bo Davis. Oh, he was on the bus. He cut a WWE promo on the bus, and we love him for that. I'm not even saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying in the end, Bo Davis's resume was Bo Davis's resume, and it left a lot to be desired. Not on the development front, because he cranked out dudes into the NFL. Tom Herman left a bunch, and Sark and Bo Davis took a bunch of them and turned them into NFL players. And then they did it again a year ago. So from the development standpoint, Texas has been doing it. From the recruiting standpoint, they hadn't really been landing difference makers. And that started to change a year ago. they clearly have been super active in the portal, but one of the things that they did with this year's portal class, it's different. And we've outlined this. They took less guys that are going to be gone in a year, meaning next year when this season ends, they're probably going to have like 4 or 5 guys that I think they'll think of as, if not contributors or starters, as guys that will be. And it just leaves them in a position where now they don't have to be desperate. Now they can just big game hunt and really think about when they're recruiting. And I think a couple of the guys they brought in are guys that are going to need a year or two of development, but that's okay. You know, it's asking these guys to keep coming in and play right away. That's too much. It wasn't, Alex January was one of the best defensive linemen in the state of Texas a year ago as a prospect. He dominated at the high school level. He was literally the district player of the year ahead of a guy like Colin Simmons. And yet it was too much to ask Alex January, a state of Texas top 25 top guy, to truly come in and just be a difference maker at the level that Texas is playing at. That's the other thing. And I think that's the other thing that fans have got to start realizing. The levels that Texas are asking their players to reach now are so different than they were 5 years ago. It's not you're getting guys and can they even play? That used to be the old question. Justice Finkley for me is a perfect example of this. That kid's a good football player, Chad.
Yeah.
And I don't have any doubts that he's going to go someplace and be a pretty good football player. But Texas is trying to get past Ohio State and Georgia. And to win those games, you're asking guys to be top 100 NFL draft picks. And if you don't have those guys, you're losing to teams that do. And so, I think that one of the things that if Clark proves able to close on a guy like Lamar Brown, I'm telling you, you won't be able to give him a big enough contract. And until you do, every year, if he continues to stack, the thought that I had was that if you're going to ask me today, who on the Texas coaching staff right now has the best opportunity to potentially one day be a head coach, it might be the guy who's only been on campus for 6 months and or 5 months and hasn't played any role in any of the things. But we're talking about it. He looks like Major Applewhite looked once upon a time, right? Where you're like, wait, he's in his late 20s and he's at Alabama or Texas, and he's got a reputation for being a good recruiter. And it's like, those guys don't stay assistant coaches very long. And sure enough, like Major's a head coach right now. Like, he looks like a guy, because when you can recruit at that level, and if he can develop, which is one of the things that the Ohio State players would tell you, like, oh man, this guy can coach. This is the kind of guy that ends up being a head coach in college football. And you just try to grab a hold of him and hold on to his cape as long as you can while you can, because this guy will be moving up the ranks quickly. And I think one of the things that Sarkeesian will have to do in time is, what's our succession plan? What is our plan of responsibility for him that keeps the carrot in front of him? Because somebody will eventually show up and be like, you can be co-defensive coordinator. And those job opportunities will come, and it will be up to Texas in order to keep him, to either give him a ton of money and say, hey, stay here, we'll pay you the most amount of money, and if you just wait long enough, you'll get the big job, as opposed to go be a coordinator at Tulsa or Oklahoma State or something like that. No offense to Oklahoma State, who I just put on the same level as Tulsa, but I was trying to give varying degrees of levels there and say, hey, instead of going there.
That's your SEC bias coming through right there, is what that is.
It didn't take long, did it, Chad?
It took 1 year for you to do that. 1 year, and you're throwing the Cowboys away. You bastard. How dare you?
It used to be Texas Tech, but somehow maybe it's all their NIL money that they're spending that it doesn't feel like they belong in the Oklahoma State broke-ass category.
Right. Exactly. By the way, Jose, I see your question regarding recruiting. Little off the topic right now, but I got it. Trust me. We'll get to it as we go through this, as we continue to discuss Alan Clark and some other things. Real quick before I do that, let me hit you with a little AV consultations. Real simply, there's two things you need to focus on. One, if you just need a bigger screen and a better setup. Don't let your grandmother or your uncle have a bigger screen than you when y'all watch Arch Manning for the first time. That would be embarrassing. AV consultations can make sure you got the biggest screen you need, the best setup you need, all the speakers, all the stuff set up the right way. 255-8678. The other thing to think about is really all the other stuff. Your computer networks in the house. Maybe it's outdoor lighting. Maybe it's an outdoor projection screen. All that stuff. They do all of it. So just call them or check out the website and look into all the different things they do. For me, they did some security camera stuff at one point. They do that as well. Lots of different ideas at AV Consultations. 255-8678 or go to avconsultations.com. Make sure you are set up. We are talking to you today. 79 days, I believe, is the number today. 79 days till Texas and Ohio State. Okay, Catch, before we get to there's another question, but it's kind of to a different discussion in recruiting. Another question for you about Clark and back to Lamar Brown. In terms of a get, right? You're talking about he's looking for kind of feathers in the cap right now, right? If he could be somewhat responsible, obviously Kwiatkowski and Baker and Sark would get credit too. But if he's going to get a little feather in the cap for these guys, lay it out for me. Is it just Brown for you, or is it like Brown or Carlton? If one of those guys ends up at Texas, you put the check box and give Clark some love for it. Give me a sense for you. How are you going to score this for Alan Clark?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
Like, let me see how it unfolds a little more.
Okay. Because I've got Justice Terry's name in my head in terms of a big name from last year. It was a flip, right? It was huge. So I'm just wondering, like, what does it need to feel like that for Alan Clark to get the, oh man?
Well, yeah, I think to get the, oh man,
it's got to feel that way.
Yeah, I think you got to get one of the big dogs to truly, I think move the needle. But
and would Carlton or Brown fill that need for you, or is it just Brown? Because of the whole LSU.
I mean, for me, the needle's moving. It's going to happen. A guy like this, there's too much smoke right now for me to be like, this is a guy that's not going to get guys. I mean, honestly, the reason why we're talking about it isn't so much Lamar Brown. It's not. It's really the volume of, like, every time I read, I feel like I'm reading a story in the last couple of weeks. I keep seeing Alan Clark's name being mentioned. And that is not usual. It's not like every kid does an update and they always mention the position coach that's recruiting them and says, oh, I got a special relationship with this guy.
Right.
And, oh, by the way, I'm going to make my decision based off special relationships. It's when a guy says that you go, oh, so cool. Good to know that if we're coming to the dance with the thing that this guy says he's going to have if we're going to get a dance. We're going to the dance. We want to ask that girl to dance at the dance. And she's let us know we fit the profile of what she will dance with, which is different than like, hey, man, I went and checked that school out and, they developed their players really. You know what I mean? Like, I love the campus. My family had a great time. But if the word special relationship doesn't come out, and then you later hear him say, I'm looking for special relationships, you better have a special relationship, I guess.
Right. Might want to have those ready to go.
So I'm taken aback by, I'll put it to you like this. I can remember a year ago when we were hearing Kenny Baker's name mentioned. But Kenny Baker's name was being mentioned by dudes that were just kind of guys. It was a year ago at this exact same time, because I can remember defensive linemen and it almost felt like they had been told to talk about Kenny Baker. It's like, oh man, they're all mentioning Kenny Baker. But they weren't Lamar Brown. They just weren't. I can't stress it enough. First year guys straight out of GA positions don't take over the lead in recruitments of 5 stars. That is not what happens in recruiting. So it's stunning the role that this guy has immediately carved out for himself, the amount of time that he's constantly being mentioned. It's the volume. And if it was just Lamar Brown, that would be notable because he's such a high, but you could almost explain it away, right? Well, these two guys have known each other for a long time. Right. It's a special situation. Mm-hmm. That part is almost an afterthought for me because it really is. So many other guys have mentioned him that it's like, here's yet another guy. And oh, by the way, it may be the most important, most coveted prospect thereafter. You know, that should be a guy that somebody else is on. Alan Clark is like, hey man, I got this. And it appears that he does. Okay. Like I said,
right.
Pay that man his money when this year is over or somebody else will. It is like adding nuclear weapons to your arsenal. It is something falling into your lap that's even better than you thought you were going to get. That doesn't always happen in life, right? That when you buy something and you end up going, hey, honey, you know, we spent like $30,000 on that thing. And I would have spent $100 knowing that, like what I know now. Like that, how many times in our life do we do that? We're thankful to come away feeling like, you know what? Got what we paid for. It is hard in life to come across situations where you go, that was so awesome. I would have paid anything. And I think Alan Clark is having a first half year impact that it's like, I don't know what we paid for Alan Clark, but I don't care. And, you know, look, you and I now have been doing a show for a couple of years. We haven't really done this show on an assistant coach. We're not doing this on Dwayne Akina. And Dwayne Akina just got, you know what I mean? Like this really is a unique situation that bears, I think, calling some attention to.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We got a few chats that we will get to as we continue to roll through this. Thank you guys for jumping in the Specs chat. Up over 530 of you in there right now as I check it. Speaking of Specs, they got all kinds of good stuff for you. Here's Lisa.
Texans know for selection and lower prices, it all starts at Specs. Shop Specs! No matter what's on the menu, we've got you covered. With all your favorites on tap, you'll bring home the win. Shop Specs! Special occasion? Flirt responsibly. Boots on, drinks up. The fun starts here.
Shout Specs, low priced, amazing. Here's to you. Shout. Cheers to savings.
Shout out to whoever set up that dinner underneath the tree. That is nice and romantic. All right. So in terms of these chats, let me throw this one up real quick here, Catch, because it continues the conversation. It says, I hope Clark turns into the new Tushard choice for us and chooses to stay here for at least 2 to 3 years. You were discussing, we were talking about kind of his rise and everything based on where he is position wise in a year or two. You know, there's space if Baker moved on, he could be D-line coach, I guess. There's room to move up. But Vivek, 2 things that have jumped out to me the whole time about this guy. Number one is the quick rise. GA at Prairie View A&M to this since 2019. He was at Ohio State in 23 and then this job. That's a quick move. The other thing, Catch, I always like to bring up, the CEO of LC Performance. So there's a performance part of this where he has worked with defensive linemen before, and he's got the names Ed Oliver, Jeffrey Simmons, and Daniil Hunter on his resume. That's also something not every assistant coach has. And I think these kids, especially on the defensive line, look at stuff like that And I haven't heard anybody like debunking it, right? Ed Oliver hasn't tweeted out, that's a bunch of crap. I've never met him. Like that's not happening, right? That is not happening. These guys, so to have
how did Ohio State let this guy get away?
Exactly. And again, back to Tui Moloau saying to Alex Dunlap, oh, y'all stole one there. He didn't have to say that. All he had to say was, yeah, he's a good guy. I've always liked him. I wish him well. He said, y'all stole one there. And I remember mentioning it at the time, Catch. We know who the big dogs are right now. You're Texas. You've been to the semis the last 2 years. And the team that just eked you out for a victory in the semis and went and won it all, he used to be there. So getting something from either Georgia or Ohio State right now, to me, if you're, if your thing is get the Longhorns up into that level and beyond, like that's a big deal. I remember thinking it at the time, like, well, that's kind of cool for Texas. Get him from Ohio State, and now it's turned into what it's turned into. And then to today's point, what if it turns into Lamar Brown? Just to take the one example, what if it turns into Lamar Brown and he gets some credit for that? I mean, what a huge hire it would be at that point.
Yeah, Texas has been on the other side of this, and I've already mentioned this a couple of times. You can go back just in the last half decade. The two names that pop up the most in my head, Brian Carrington and Rashad Samples. And Samples was a guy that was really, both of these guys kind of had the same deal, but Samples was definitely a guy that it was like, okay, you started to hear his name being mentioned a lot by prospects, and he wasn't even going on the road. So guys were coming into town, and he was making a connection with them while they visited. And then guys were going away, like exchange, like it got to be where, okay, well, Rashad Samples is an assistant behind the scenes. Now he's getting wide receiver job offers. Is there anything we can do? And I think sometimes, ultimately, this is the position that Ryan Day would have been put in. Ryan Day or maybe this guy was like, I don't care what you do, Ryan. You can't offer me enough money or prestige or a job. Maybe he did that. Maybe I'm going to Texas. But in reality, what probably happened was this opportunity happened. And Ryan Day, for whatever reasons that are specific to his staff, maybe they just didn't have the same job opening. Maybe they had a different plan for it. Maybe they didn't want to elevate because they didn't want feelings to get. I don't know.
Right. Maybe Clark wanted to just come back closer to home.
Good.
And it was hard to fight geography for Ryan Day.
And look, maybe in a case with a guy like Rashad Samples, like maybe, God, you could have tried. But anything short of giving him a wide receiver position job that wasn't open, I don't know what you do. And so you just want to be on the right side of these when they hit, because it's a little bit like when you trade for draft picks in basketball as an NBA team, or when you trade a big player in baseball and you get back prospects. They don't always hit. They don't. And why do guys like Sarkeesian or Tom Herman or Ryan Day let a guy like this get away? Because if Ryan Day knew, if you and I were like, go back in time in February and go, hey, Ryan, FYI, we're from the future. Don't ask why, of all the places that we could go backwards in time, we're here with you to give you a warning. But like that dude that your players love, I'm not telling you that you have to keep him. I'm just going to tell you that here's a story on orangebloods.com from middle of June where this kid's mentioning that, I'm just saying you might, when the time comes, make sure that guy doesn't leave town. They don't have that ability to have us go back in time and tell them, hey, this is the one that you don't let go. And man, we got an ambulance in the neighborhood with its light.
Look out.
Did you see the lights on my head or anything?
No, I did not. I did not see it. I just saw you look over.
Can you see them? They're like flashing on my head. I got a bald head, maybe. So I'm telling you, there's an ambulance in the neighborhood. So, like I said, it is every once in a while you trade that star player for picks and the picks hit.
Yeah.
So many other times they don't. And I think that this is one of those situations where young people, young talents come through your program. And I've had this at Orange Bloods too, man. Sometimes a young writer comes in and you've got him on borrowed time. You don't have it in your budget to give him a full-time job. Maybe he's bigger than like the roles that you would have set aside for him. And sometimes guys just spread their wings and they go. And like, maybe that's what happened here. But, and Texas will, in its own way, have to deal with what Ohio State did, right? It'll be a different version of that. It will be, he's wanted. How do you keep him without stepping on toes and keeping everything in sync? And look, there are probably people in the building right now who, if they were watching this show, would go, guys, he's only been here for 5 months. Like, slow down. But like, you can see where this is going. This is not the kind of thing that we really need to slow down on. The reason why we're doing this is because we're talking about this as a topic today, is because it's so obvious. It's like it's an elephant in the room right now that they've got a guy on staff that's emerged as a difference maker right now in recruiting this year that I think is a little bit unexpected. And considering they're getting ready to go into a monster visit weekend this weekend, they've got another one coming up afterwards. This is the topic of the hour, and he's a real big part of why this topic might have as much upside as it does.
Yeah, and I would love to get the thoughts if we could talk to Sark, Kwiatkowski, and Baker and say how much of what we're talking about today is we're dead on and how much of it is pump the brakes. I wonder how much everything
there's probably a little pump the brakes. Because what did I say? This guy is going to be a head coach certainly in the next 10 years. I'm curious to see how fast he'll be a head coach before 40, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Just by like what my initial impression of age, profile, reaction, value of being able to be an elite recruiter, like you can just see some of these things coming a mile away. Again, we would have said it about Major Applewhite once upon a time when he was here. And whether or not we think Major ever made it, he did the things that we thought he would. He became a head coach really young.
He did.
He was on the path. He was a OC at Alabama, like at the age of 30 or whatever that was, under Nick Saban of all people. He ends up getting the head coaching job. He's on his second head coach. You know what I mean? Like Major Applewhite ultimately did the things that we thought when he was in his 20s that he would ultimately accomplish. He just never hit the heights in those roles that people might have been able to imagine for him. But he got the opportunities that some people never get in a lifetime. And I think you can just see this guy's age and profile early on and know, just like I said about Tashard Choice. Tashard Choice is a guy that's going to be a head coach. It's going to happen. And it's only a matter of time. He'll be a head coach at this level next 5 years.
All right. Bates, I do see your super chat. We will get that one. It is a $4.99 super chat. Thank you. Said, who's another coach who's 15 to 20 years into their career that had a similar start to their
Steve Sarkeesian comes to mind.
No?
Steve Sarkeesian goes from GA at USC to kind of assistant quarterbacks coach.
Right.
To, he was promoted from within, but his start at USC doesn't come from an elevated place before that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. What about Lane Kiffin's route? I'm trying to remember his particular route. I don't know if he would be exactly the same. Sark's a good example, though. I think that's definitely a good one. Bates, that's a great question.
Because like he went from,
what about Kingsbury? There was a certain quickness to that.
I mean, Sark went from El Camino College as the quarterbacks coach in 2000 to the quarterbacks coach at USC in 2001, where Carson Palmer was his first pupil. And the year before that, he was at El Camino College, which is very similar to I was at Southern and I was at, you know what I mean? Like he made a massive jump up to even as a GA at Ohio State, but his first paid job as a position coach at Texas is an astronomically like fast and like transcendent rise. There would be coaches who've been scrapping and clawing and incredibly good at what they do, and would go, wait a minute, how did he get to Texas?
Yeah.
Do what?
Yeah, it's a good point. Bates, thank you for that one. All right, Catch, I promised I'd hit this one. So let's cleanse the palate real quick. Just a quick separate recruiting question, and then we'll pop back to this because people have some good chats for us. One about Lamar Brown coming up. But real quick, Jose says, Catch, does Texas still need Turntine? Referencing John Turntine, the offensive lineman that'll come in on the 20th with that third group in June. What's your thoughts on Turntine today?
Every program needs elite talent. There's never a cap on need for elite players. And if you think I'm wrong, go look at the Alabama and Georgia rosters from just 5 years ago. Because as impressive as their rosters are now, they're in decline from where they've been. And yeah, man, the thing you'd never hear Nick Saban say is, no, Kyle, he never told Kyle Flood not to recruit 5 stars or high 4 stars or any elite level prospects because they didn't need them. And Texas hasn't recruited so well in the offensive line that even signing a guy like Felix Ojo fixes what they need. Texas really needs what they had in 2022, that influx of, maybe they don't need 7 guys to come in, but they need a class where they have multiple super blue chip prospects, other guys that could, they need to have a class where they come out of it and go, out of those 5 or 6 guys that we signed, 2 or 3 of them became high level college players and pros. And they haven't recruited in the last couple of years at that level. Hasn't been desperate because looks like they're going to hit on a Trevor Gooseby. There are some hits, but there's not a lot of prolific super blue chip prospects that you can lean on beyond. They got Brandon Baker in the wings, but there's not a lot beyond that. And they got guys that they think have a chance, but I don't think there's a lot of, and they go into this season with guys that, I think there are question marks on. Neto Yamuzalo, like, how good is he really? Really? Cole Hudson? Is he really going to make us forget about Jake Majors? Is that going to happen? Or will we remember Jake Majors more than we ever thought in our lifetimes we would 2 years ago when we watched Jake Majors and thought, is he even good enough to play at Texas? And then, maybe sometimes the devil is better than the one you eventually get to know. I don't know. But yeah, they need more talent, Jose. They could use 3 John Turntines, if I'm being completely honest. And look, Turntine fancies himself as a tackle. I think that guy, if you played him at center, could be the best center prospect that Texas has ever, like, since Dan Neal. You did go back to Dan Neal, I think, to find a guy at that position that would be that level of prospect. So, I think he's an inside guy instead of a tackle when it's all said and done, but he could very well be a future high-level NFL player at that position. So, yeah, buy him by the pound if you could.
Catch, Vivek has an interesting question. We started talking Lamar Brown. How about this comp? Vivek wants to know, who is better, Terry or Lamar Brown? I'm assuming that is Justice Terry or Lamar Brown.
It's pretty close. I don't think of them as quite the same thing.
Both will be both interior guys, right?
I think they're both 5 stars. I don't think either is a 6-star. So I'll say Terry because I do think he's a little more explosive. But I look at Lamar Brown and I think he's a little more physically natural for the NFL. You look at Justice Terry's frame. It's like, okay, well, he's got to develop it a little bit, but guys like that have to be Tommy Harris a lot of times in order to make the ascension to the heights that you're projecting them for. And it's like, how many Tommy Harrises have we seen in our lifetime? Guys that weigh 290, 295 and are just so amazingly quick that it never matters that they're undersized, that they can go to Pro Bowls and be all pro, and they're just so freakishly talented. I think Justice Terry's got a little bit of that, but I didn't think Justice Terry was I wouldn't have rated him above Tommy Harris either. So I'll go with Terry, but I really think their value is essentially exactly the same. And what that translates to is a better than 50% chance of being an NFL player, and not just an NFL player, but the guys that are rated where they are when they hit at significantly higher levels, 10, 20 times the number, are more likely to be first, second, or third round picks than players at any other rankings. Like that, when they hit, they go boom. You have to look no further than Kelvin Banks. Texas had not had a guy like Banks with that kind of recruiting pedigree in a decade plus. It was a possibility that he could miss, but if he hit, the upside is that he could be what it is that he turned into. And I think when we talk about Terry and Brown, that's what we're talking about. Just as Terry's ranked where he's ranked, and that means that the scouting industry believes he's going to be a first-round draft pick if he hits. And I think the scouting industry feels the exact same way about Lamar Brown. So when we talk about who we think is better, it's like, well, one guy might be drafted 10th and another guy might eventually be drafted 15th. It's kind of the same at that point, where we would differentiate. If it was a top of the draft guy, we'd go, no, that guy was a top 5 pick. That was a guy that people traded up for. That was a difference maker, even amongst difference makers.
If you guys want to throw us a super chat, it'll go right to the top of the list. Somebody else had a pretty good chat here about Sark and the ability to hire good coaches. We will hit that one. We also get you a little buy or sell. Also, real quick, to thank another one of our great partners. Let me see if I can make you thirsty. These are my favorite vodka cocktails on the face of the earth. Deep Eddy Vodka does a great job. They're so smooth, so good. I told y'all this week, I had a chance to taste a little bit of the competition, and it ain't even close. The Deep Eddy Vodka tasting room is where you want to be. Thursdays through Sundays, there are your hours. There are some of those cocktail examples. They've got tastings if you like. And remember, pineapple is now out there, the 9th flavor of Deep Eddy Vodka. So now that's a part of the tasting. Go find out about the history. Go find out about all the different flavors. You will love the experience. And make sure you get some barbecue too. The Crimson Creek Smokehouse barbecue truck is right there on site. You pair that up with the vodka stuff, and you're going to have a great, great time. Make sure you do it responsibly. Have yourself a good time. Tell them you heard about it on Orange Bloods Live, the Deep Eddy Vodka tasting room. All right, Catch. I like this one. A little love for Sark from Michael. Says, Catch, you always say Sark's superpower is the ability to make adjustments, but another superpower is the ability to absolutely nail coaching hires. He's so good at finding diamonds in the rough.
No, I mean, he's not perfect, but he's got a very high hit rate. And I think we've seen several examples in the last couple of years that when Sark goes to hire a guy.
And I don't even know, would we really call it diamonds in the rough, though? Isn't it more like his 2 mentors taught him, Saban and Pete Carroll? Find the talent, even if it's young. If you're good enough, you're old enough. And
I think that's easier said than done. There really is an art to it.
Right.
Because these guys are trying to find guys that fit in chemistry-wise. There are egos in play. You're trying to find guys that you think will fit in with the chemistry of it's just like, your coaching staff's not 1,000% different than your thoughts on building a team. You do have to find guys that ultimately can work and fit together.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's as easy as like, just go find the best guys and hire them, because that's not what Saban did either.
No,
Saban often went places that nobody, we will do these hot boards where it's like there's a position that's open and who are the top 5 candidates. And Steve Sarkeesian and Saban before him would go places and hire people that if you'd have had 100 guesses, you wouldn't have been able to guess the hire that they were going to make.
Yeah. So you would agree with the diamonds in the rough analogy?
I think he's much more willing to go diamonds in the rough with his coaches than he is with his players, which I think is it's chef's kiss kind of perfect. But
if you're going to do one or the other, right, nowadays, you probably should do that with coaches, not players.
It's funny. It's like it's the Jimmies and Joes and not the X's and the O's. And I think he's like, you know what? Because of that truth, I can do these things a lot of different ways. I think, my guess when it comes to hiring, is that Sarkeesian knows what he's listening for. So, if you're a guy like Sark and you call Saban, or you call, you think about the coaches who are mentors, you call a Pete Carroll. It's no insignificant thing that when you listen to them, what you're listening for, and who you should be listening to. And I think he's getting counsel. Somebody is letting him know this is a dude to keep an eye on, because he's not on Ohio State's campus. Somebody's told him, this is a guy. And he's listening to that guy. And that is really interesting because Sarkeesian is such a take control guy that, I find it fascinating. Maybe one day he'll have so much success that there will be a biography of sorts on Saban or on Sarkeesian. And because he won't tell us now. He is not a guy that likes to talk about the secret sauces. Even when you give him an opportunity to sing the praises of his assistant coaches, he won't do it. I don't think he wants to tip the world to what we've got. I don't want to put into the ether.
I don't want to let him know
who my guys are and who I trust and where I'm getting my information from. But I would love to know the real backstory on how he hired Kenny Baker, how it really happened, and how he hired Alan Clark. Who is he listening to that those came through as suggestions, guys that he should look at, and he took them so seriously that he ignored any potential outside noise about, wait, you hired who?
Yeah.
Because Texas fans are real honest about, look, man, you got a blank checkbook. You can go out and hire anybody.
Right. And we were that way. Remember our discussions about Kenny Baker. You're not the defensive line coach in the NFL. You're the assistant to the defensive line coach, like all that stuff. So,
and look, Steve Sarkeesian was more right about that than I was. Yeah. And, I hope the thing that at least you guys feel like you can get from me is when we say something and we end up wrong, we're definitely not the type that won't circle back around and go, oops, our bad. We did do that show where we did say that thing and it turned out. And so here we are a year later and we're giving Sark his flowers for having the guts to be so bold and then to be right in addition to being bold. Well done. At some point, anything else, I'm not trying to turn this into like a worshiping hour, but well done. That's
no kidding.
We will nitpick the hell out of the nitpickiest things in the world. To have this in your bag of tricks is really impressive.
Yeah, and Michael, I'll do it right now because I'll tell you, you've talked me into the diamonds in the rough, and Ketch did too. So yeah, I think that is a good analogy now that I think about it. So see, there you go. I was wrong about that. Jay, I see your super chat. Here it is, $5 super chat from Jay. What's sad is this is where our D-line recruiting should have been 3 years ago. Think about where we would be right now. Baker greater than Bo. Is that fair, Ketch?
I don't like living in that world, Jay, because Texas is where they are right now because they learned those lessons. And, it could have been somebody else that wasn't Bo that was just a little bit better. Ultimately what Texas needed was significantly better than Bo, I think, from a talent acquisition standpoint. And, Bo Davis, to me, has always been a little bit of a mess as a recruiter. He's famous in his first trip at Texas for going to high schools and just randomly offering guys without ever counseling coaches on the staff, including the head coach. You there got to be like, well, Bo just did some Bo stuff. And I don't know, Jay, I've had this conversation a lot with some people, but I'm a real big, my whole thought on fate is that the things in life that are supposed to happen are the things that actually do happen. And you've got Texas in a position right now where they're entering this season. The program is at a point where it's only been at this level a couple of times in the history of the world, in the history of its existence. it's ever been quite this high. And I think all those little failures, all those little nicks, all of those little lessons that have been learned, Sarkeesian's learned from them. So again, one of his superpowers is he's very much a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me type of guy. And I know a lot of coaches that have so much pride that it can be fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on you, fool me 18 times, shame on you. They don't take that accountability. Sark has done a really good job of, like, when he makes a mistake, he cleans it up. He doesn't let the same mistake beat him twice very often. Yeah. And so, the coaches will tell the players that the journey matters more than the final result. And the final result can't happen without the journey. And I would just say, Jay, I feel where you're coming from. But Sark's been on a journey since he got to Texas. And all of the bad has led to this moment in time where they're on the precipice of a lot of good. So I don't know that I would change much, except I would have played Arch over Quinn last year.
Don't do that. Don't do that right at the end.
I said I nitpick. I'm just not going to nitpick that one. I have my other nitpicks.
Sometimes the nits are bigger. Some nits are bigger than others. All right. Catch, anything else? Outside of that, maybe. Anything else we need to hit today, recruiting wise? Alan Clark, this whole discussion. Anything else we need to wrap up before we buy or sell?
No, and look, David Keith Williams jumped in and was like, hey, people need to remember that Coach Davis and he put the full list out there into the NFL over the past 4 years. I would quibble a little bit on Vernon Broughton, a smidge. But look, David, just to reiterate the point, not that you're saying we didn't say this, I just want to reiterate it, but Bo Davis did a fantastic job developing players. I mean, Texas has a streak now of like multiple defensive linemen going in the draft. It's impressive. He just didn't recruit any of those guys. And the problem is that going into the last offseason, there wasn't anybody left other than Collins and Broughton, who, again, weren't his guys. They were Tom Herman's guys. Murphy was one of the last Tom Herman commitments. So, it's a little bit of a nuanced, complicated conversation. As a developer of talent while he was at Texas, I think you got to give Bo Davis an A+. I think as a recruiter, I think you have to give him an F, because literally not a single guy he was ever really responsible for as a recruiter in all of the years that he was here, down like going into last season, they never played really a significant down for Texas. So, it kind of is what it is. And I think it's why ultimately, they don't have Justice Terry on the road. They don't have what they did last year in recruiting had Bo Davis stuck around for another year. And it's not that he's a terrible recruiter. He's just not an elite recruiter. And at Texas, the aim is elite. The aim is to get not just Justice Terry once, but Justice Terry 1 year, and then Lamar Brown the next year, and then whoever the next Lamar Brown and Justice Terry is the year beyond that. They want to get them annually. That's not who Bo Davis was as a recruiter, and never will be.
David Keith, always love your chats. We appreciate you jumping in. All right, Kat, you ready to buy or sell?
Yeah.
All right, first or second?
I'll go second.
All righty. Back to our original discussion. Well, back to it's recruiting. Buy or sell number one. As of today, you'd say Texas gets Ojo, Carlton, and Lamar Brown.
Fuck it. Bye.
Well, first world problems, right?
If I'm going to get on a limb. I just had a weird sneaking. I've always thought they'd get Ojo and Carlton, so it's not even about that. It is, do I think they're going to get Lamar Brown? I think it is statistically unlikely, but I've had spidey senses up for Lamar Brown for months. I've said for months. If they get that kid on campus one time, watch how his recruitment changes. I'm not backing down now. So I'm going for the glory. If they get him, we can bookmark this page and we can play this audio. And if they don't, we'll forget I ever said it.
Right. It will go away. Right.
I'll say a lot of stuff. It'll go into it'll be like, in Inside Out when Bing Bong's at the pile of memories and they're all going to dissolve and die. That's where most of my thoughts and opinions are. I have so many of them.
Yes.
That they'll just be down there lost with the rest.
And remember, Ojo is coming in with this group this weekend. And let me direct you to that QR code down there, lower left, joinorangebloods.com. It is the perfect time. We're talking to you on a Thursday. Tonight is the War Room. Full list from Jason Sukamel about all the guys expected to come in for the visit, including Ojo and the very latest info that he's got on them. Plus, he'll be covering it over the weekend and checking, stalking airports and all that good stuff. Orangebloods.com. That is your QR code. All right, Catch. Buy or sell number 2. Starting in 2026, you think the CFP goes to 16 teams?
Buy. Yeah. And I think, yes. I don't need to give a long dissertation on it. I think that's what's going to happen.
It seems like that's where it is headed. All right. Speaking of where things are headed, buy or sell number 3. Pacers win game 3 last night. Now you like OKC in 6 or 7?
Buy. I mean, I haven't changed my thoughts on the series, but it can't happen before 6 or 7. So, yeah, that's kind of where I am.
Have you seen how many wins now these Pacers have in the playoffs as an underdog?
I mean, a lot.
9. And that's like second all time. There's a team, I can't remember the team. There's a team with 12 of them. 9 times they've been the betting underdog and won the game outright. That's crazy.
The thing that's happening in this series that has me most concerned that Indiana could win the series is that Indiana is playing at a pace, and they've done this to everybody. They're wearing their ass out, man. By the time the fourth quarter, Oklahoma City wants to play with pace.
Yeah. And
by the time the fourth quarter rolls around, they're walking the ball up the court. Like the Pacers are running the youngest team in the league around ragged.
They finally made SGA work last night. They made him work hard. He was exhausted by the end.
No, that was an exhausted team. And my thought process still is not the Pacers are better. My thought process last night was, when you watch a fight and it gets into the middle rounds and the first time you see the guy that you think's the better fighter feel flawed, feel wobbly, take that first shot and you go, oh, I don't know if he's going to make it 12.
Right.
That's kind of how I felt last night. I still think they win the fight, and I usually feel that about a great fighter in a fight. But the first time they really I didn't think Oklahoma City felt vulnerable when they lost game 1, even though there was some weirdness about that, and the game was even close with how many times Indiana. If you were an Indiana fan, you would say, well, we don't turn the ball as many times as we did. We might win that game by 40.
But Oklahoma City dominated game 1 except for that much of it.
Yeah. Last night they felt vulnerable. Last night I was like, I can imagine Indiana winning 2 more games like that. And I think game 4 is the finals. If you're Oklahoma City, you better win game 4 because I don't think they'll sweep Indiana 3 straight the way this feels like a 7-game series. I'm willing to admit I'm wrong. I thought Oklahoma City was just going to blow through them like crap through a goose in these next 3 games, and it's just not going to happen the way that I thought it would. I thought, okay, game 2, the universe is restored. Game 3, they'll expose them for the frauds they are. Game 4, they'll just run out of gas. Game 5, they'll quit. That is not what's happening.
No, it's good stuff. Game 3 was a lot of fun to watch. All right, Catch, let's go to the golf. I'll jack it up from where you did yesterday. Buy or sell number 4. We're at Oakmont. Tough course. I'll give you Scotty, Rory, Bryson, or Koepka, or the field. You'll take the field. And, of course, they've started now, so you can take a peek if you like.
How much money are we talking?
Let's make it interesting. Let's say you were betting – let's say it's $100.
I would take the golfers. I'd take Scotty, Rory, Bryson, or Koepka.
Okay.
But the higher the volume of money goes up, the more I'm like, I'm doing the smart thing and I'm taking the field.
Yeah. So last night as we're getting ready for to record Outsiders, Bo Edge, big golf fan, says, "Did you see those guys come off the practice rounds and talk about what Oakmont is like?" And I said, "No, I didn't." He goes, "They looked like they'd been through childbirth." The looks on their face. He said the average height of just the primary cut is 5 inches, Catch. 5 inches of grass just on the first level of rough.
I saw Rory hit one into the rough pretty early in his round when he was I think he was still at 2 under.
Yeah.
And he gave a smile that screamed, "What the actual fuck?"
Yeah. I mean, they're saying like regular golfers, like just regular everyday golfers just cannot go play this course right now. You couldn't do it. You'd lose too many balls. You'd never find the ball. You'd have to have a marshal out there with you to run the ball down. That's
well, look, Rory is +4 after his round today.
Yeah.
But he was playing like crap. Like I think he's been on the drunk tour for the last month or so.
Right. Yeah.
He's living the good life after getting the big one.
Hey, when you win the Masters and you're from Northern Ireland, you're going to party.
He might have been on drugs today. And like, that's cool. Like, I'm not begrudging Rory at all. Rory can, it's what Liverpool did. When they won the Premier League, they had 4 games left.
They were terrible. Nailed it in. Yeah. Yeah. It happens.
There's an expression like they were on the beach. Rory looks like he's been on the beach.
Yeah. If you are a fan of watching a golf course beat up on golfers, this is your U.S. Open. They usually do it about every year.
And good on JJ Spawn. I don't even know who that is, but he got to -4 early in his round.
Yeah.
And somehow that dude's still at -4 and the day's over.
Here's the inside info I got from Bo Catch.
He didn't bogey the whole day, Chad.
That's good. That is good. That's one round. Let's see if it keeps up. Supposedly what happened is the last time they were at Oakmont, the guys were a little better than the course people wanted them to be. So now Oakmont is fighting back, and it's supposed to be brutal. So we'll see what happens this weekend. All right, Catch. Weird, hotter than to finish. No birthday connection here, but I just saw part of a movie, and it got me thinking. Buy or sell number 5. Halle Berry, hotter than Michelle Pfeiffer, but Michelle's Catwoman is hotter than Halle's. Buy or sell?
It's a wonderfully specific question.
Thank you. I saw a little bit of Batman Returns, and I just had to throw it out.
I'm going to go buy that in the end that Michelle Pfeiffer was the Catwoman.
She was incredible. Like, it's just, I saw the scene with her in was it a mall or the store with the whip and the mannequins and stuff, and I'm just like, she's magnetic.
And you know my thing for Halle.
I know. That's why I threw it out here.
You know, and look, I would also just say this, like a young Halle Berry and a young Michelle Pfeiffer circa Grease 2 era.
Right.
It's a pretty good battle.
Oh, yeah. No, these are two just top.
I would say Halle's a little more voluptuous, even though she's a smaller woman. You know, Michelle Pfeiffer is like a jaguar. You know, she's lean and mean, but both incredibly beautiful women.
And that analogy might be why she was a little better Catwoman. If she's a jaguar, then there you go.
There you go. Catwoman.
Yeah. There it is. Batman Returns on a movie channel near you right now. All right, Catch, what do you got?
Buy or sell number 1. Alan Clark will be a Texas coach in the 2027 season.
Head coach 2027?
No. Alan Clark will be on the Texas roster as a coach.
Oh, I'm sorry, on the
2027.
Ooh, man. There's only a couple places to move there. 526. I'll say, boy, that's a tough one. My gut says sell. My gut says it's a couple more seasons, but by that one, he's moved on. I'm going to say sell.
Buy or sell number 2. I'm just going to ask you the same golf question you asked me. I liked it. You'd take those 4 golfers over the field, even with a peek at the first day numbers.
I'm still going to sell and take the field. I really do think this is going to be a mess because with Bryson, I know his game sometimes is I'm going to be a little bit off, right? I'm just going to be further up than everybody, but you can't do that here. You got to be so perfect. You got to be so good. And as much as I dig those guys, and I hope I'm wrong, I'm still going to go with the field. I'll still play the math and say it's somebody outside of those four.
Buy or sell number 3, Tyrese Halliburton, best player in these NBA finals.
Ooh. Boy, that's a really interesting call considering the way it started. It's a sell so far for the finals, for the whole thing, because until last night, he had a shot. Literally, that single shot was about all he'd given. And last night, he really wakes up. So I'm going to sell that right now. Hell of a performance last night to wake him back up. We got to see 2 more of those before I'll make him the best player in this series.
I agree. I mean, the MVPs in the series. I was just curious to see how high you were on SGA ultimately.
Yeah, SGA's been the best player so far. The way they defended him last night was brilliant. Carlisle deserves credit. Those guys, they've got some – by the way, a former Longhorn deserves credit because Turner had a game last night, Catch. He was apparently ill going into the game. He had 5 blocks, just a real physical, nasty presence from him. That's another, guy to think about. If you're a Longhorn fan, he's going for a ring in this one.
It's funny that you should go there. Buy or sell number 4, Miles Turner.
Hey,
most underrated, really good NBA player that the school has ever produced.
Oh, wow. Most underrated ever.
Really good player.
Really good
player. Because I'm of the opinion that Texas fans don't think of Miles Turner because of the one and done. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they think of him as a guy that's been a huge NBA hit.
No, you're right. And there's this group of guys that there's Turner and there's Hayes and there's some others. Like immediately a guy like PJ Tucker pops in my mind, but will we consider PJ Tucker a really good player?
And is he underrated?
Right. And is he? Yeah, because PJ Tucker, I don't know if I would I always think he's underrated because I love him so much, but I don't know if he would be considered that. So I'll give Turner his love and buy. I just gave him the love from last night. So let me just buy. Let me double down and I'll buy on it because he was impressive. And if they win this thing, he's going to need to be part of it. Indiana's defense is one of the critical elements that will win them this title, and it's what helped them win that game last night.
And finally, buy or sell number 5. It would be ridiculous of me to ask you, have you seen Michelle Pfeiffer's performance in Grease 2? Because you've never seen Grease, the original movie. Buy or sell?
Ooh, see, this is all about timing. This is a sell because I have seen it. My wife and daughter and I had a triangular musical movie experience where each of us picked a musical and everybody watched it. Okay.
When did this happen?
This happened, I don't know. I'm going to say in the last year, 6 to 8 months ago.
You just saw Grease in the last year.
I had never seen Grease up through the last year. My wife says, let's watch Grease. My daughter said, let's watch Hamilton. And I said, let's watch the South Park musical. So that's what we did. That's what we did in the Hastings house. I have seen Grease 1, but not 2.
I would say you got to do that exercise again.
And I need to see Grease 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to find another musical I like then. That'll be tough.
No,
maybe I'll go Team America.
Grease 2, you have to see Michelle Pfeiffer in Grease 2.
Okay. All right. I mean, for that, I'll watch it. Sure.
I mean, she really is quite stunning.
Okay. Fair
and
enough.
The fact, I don't want to be this. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to play the spoiler.
Yes, please don't spoil a cinematic masterpiece like Grease 2. Please don't. How dare you? It'd be like spoiling, be like spoiling.
Is the time for all seasons. I'm not going to do it.
No. Be like spoiling Usual Suspects for somebody. You don't want to do that.
Don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that. All right. Was that 5?
That was 5.
That's it. That's how we do it. That is how we buy or sell. Let's see if there was anything else we had up here. Jay threw in another quick super chat catch. $2 super chat says Lee is a must get in my opinion. He's referencing this offensive lineman from Hawaii. Is that who that is?
I'm assuming so, yes.
I'm guessing that's where he's going. Yeah, kid out of Honolulu that every big time coach is probably going to end up needing to take a trip to, or big time recruiter will take a trip to Honolulu.
I think Felix Ojo's the must get. And if you get him, then everything else starts to pile on as like cherries on top of the sundae, but he's not a must get the way Felix Ojo is a must get.
Yeah. And again, right now, you think Texas is looking is in a good spot for Ojo as he gets ready to come in for his official visit. And he just canceled the OU visit, correct?
Correct. It would be
that was Ojo.
It would be a really big upset at this because there's a real sense that other like the Ohio States and the Michigan of the world have made this thing interesting, but they're still behind Texas going into this visit, and you don't expect that Texas will stub their toe.
Yeah, I said it the other day on the recruiting show. Catch kind of says something about the level of dude we're talking about when he's trying to decide between the last two national champions and the only team to get to the last two semifinals. Like, it's a good problem.
Look, these are the battles you have to win, and
yeah, that's big time stuff.
And Texas wins a lot of these battles where, I think that's the difference between the Steve Sarkeesian era. There's a lot of differences, I suppose, but, we'd known as a little more of a pipe dream under previous regimes, talking about a guy when the competition is this. There's always at times a little bit of a defeatist attitude. There was, and at times hopeful wishing, but you knew. Now, I think Texas is the scariest team. It used to be Georgia. Yeah, who knows? Maybe it still is Georgia. And I think Texas and Georgia and Ohio State are the three schools right now that just scare the hell out of everybody once they get involved on a guy. That, if you're Georgia or you're Ohio State, you wouldn't want to hear, oh, now he's visiting Texas.
Right.
And Texas will have that same response for Ohio State and Georgia. There are three schools really nationally. And Oregon does that a little bit. You start to hear a guy say, yeah, man, I've always loved Oregon. I want to go check that out. You go, huh, okay.
Yeah.
And duly noted, but there aren't many.
Yeah. And that's also why, Catch, we always talk about like getting guys that those two want. Like go back to Justice Terry, right? That was not just a flip, but a flip from Georgia. And in the case of Ojo, it's going to be a guy that if you get him, you will know very clearly that that's somebody Ohio State wanted badly and was in on. And he's visited, I believe, right? Has he taken an official to Ohio State?
Who's that?
Ojo.
Yes.
Yes, he's been there. Okay. He's been a lot of places, but I'm pretty sure Ohio State has been one of them. All right.
Dad, we got to wrap up. I got to go pee.
All right. Hey, it's as good a reason as any. Thanks for liking, subscribing, and getting those notifications. We appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow for a Friday edition. It's House Divided. Orange Bloods Live.
All that pee hit me at once.
Yeah. Everybody go pee. See ya.